Today's episode emphasizes physical fitness for our listeners who want to be healthy but lead busy lives. You shop at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's when you get a chance. You want to avoid premature aging. Well, our guest today is the inspirational Dr. Jasel Martin, a physical fitness junkie from high school track star to kickbox instructor to a master in exercise physiology and PhD in public health. So when Jasel suffered a head injury that prevented her from walking to the end of the driveway, she was devastated. How did she deal with it and come back? Stay tuned to the end for some eye-popping tips on weight loss.
Baransu Balance Podcast with Dr. Ince emphasizes the interdependence and importance of a healthy mind, body, and soul.
Welcome, Jasel, to another episode of Baransu Balance Podcast. But today I want to emphasize your role as a wellness coach. So tell me a little bit about your story. People love stories about how you got interested in physical fitness.
Oh, okay. I'm going to try to make this really truncated because I have been an athlete for most of my life.
Okay. What kind of sport?
I ran track and field in high school and middle school and had a track scholarship. And so it's always been a huge part of my life.
Okay.
And
What event was your specialty? 100
I was
meter?
a relayer.
Relay? Oh, okay.
Yeah, did the 4x4. That was the one.
Okay.
But I also did a couple of other ones over my track career. Like I did the 4x1600.
Mm-hmm.
I've done several sprints, so 100s, 200s.
Okay.
At one point in time, I tried hurdles and I tried the 300 meter hurdles. That was not my jam.
Oh, okay.
I remember one meet. My coach was like, "Oh, you're pretty good with mid distance," but I didn't think she was serious. And so we get to a meet. I thought I was doing a 400, and I sprinted that 400 because I thought I was doing a 400.
Uh-huh.
And I kept going. She put me in a 1600-meter run.
Oh, wow. And she forgot to tell you about it?
No, that was it. She probably did. That was, how kids do. I was probably like, I got this. I was used to running a 400.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was the experience. That was probably the worst race of my life. I made it, but
Okay.
I was struggling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you decided to go to school, you went to school fast, I understand.
I did. I went to school when I was 16, to college when I was 16.
What? Child prodigy. And still a prodigy. I don't know if you can say adult prodigy. Okay.
I don't know how that works. And I try to stay away from the term expert, but I know a lot about this. So honestly, when I was at Oakwood, I worked out and I did a lot of Pilates and things like that in my dorm room. I would go run every now and then. I would maybe dibble and dabble in flag football every now and then because my friends made me. It was because that was my workout of choice. But it was really just a lifestyle thing. It wasn't really, my mindset didn't become about using exercise to help people manage chronic conditions, especially until in my 20s. I decided I didn't want to be a dentist, which is what I ultimately went to college to be. And I started working as a hospital administrator, and I absolutely hated it. Then I was a medical social worker, and I was like, this is great, and I'm making an impact, but I am not getting paid very much, and I can't live off of this salary for good. So it's like, well, what do I love? What comes naturally to me. Fitness, it was something I'd always been into. So that's when I went back and did my second master's in exercise science.
Oh,
Um, and that is when I also learned about fitness in the health promotion realm of things outside of just the gym and, athletics. And
okay.
so I started learning about how physical activity, you know, because there is a difference between exercise and physical activity. I don't think people really understand the difference sometimes. But when I learned about physical activity and the psychology of it and how that works with your nutrition to start to improve health outcomes, that actually triggered my initial interest in public health as well. And so that is how that.
Okay. All right. So you went from the track to improving our lives in a bigger scale. But now you're kind of going back to the one-on-one coaching. So I'm going to ask you a few questions that our listeners have asked at one time or another. And so this is not going to require a long answer, just a yes or no and one or two sentences. So people have a slow metabolism. That's why they can't lose weight. True or false?
False.
Okay, next. It's better to exercise on an empty stomach. True or false? After you, I'm going to use your terminology. So Dr. Giselle Martin has an ebook available on her website about the benefits and precautions of intermittent fasting. So, true or false? It's better to exercise on an empty stomach.
I'm going to say true, but there are caveats to this.
Okay, we can take time for the caveats.
Okay. So it is better. The research shows it is better for you to do cardiovascular uh, activity on a fasted stomach. So like we call it fasted cardio. And with that fasted cardio, this should be low steady state cardio. This is not your explosive hit workouts or anything like that. Now, strength training, if or any type of plyometric, anything like that that requires you to use the strength of your muscles and power in your muscles, it's best to have a small meal right before. So if you are intermittent fasting, you can do your cardio during your fasted period, and it does not impact your body. It actually helps your body to burn more fat during that time. But when you start adding the strength training, you want to do that towards the tail end of your fasting period, or even going from your fasted to your fed state. So that way you can have a small meal right before you do your workout, and then you can refuel your muscles afterwards.
Okay, so generally, you're saying that if you're going to go for a brisk walk, it's okay to do it after not eating.
Hmm.
Okay, or maybe even better.
Maybe even.
Uh, okay, so no pain, no gain. That was on my list. I think that was on my list. Yes, no pain, no gain. True or false?
I'm going to say false. I actually hate that phrase, but
Oh, huh.
I don't
Okay,
like it when people say that.
okay. I thought you had to tear your muscle down before you build it up, but that's fine.
You
Okay,
do. You
okay.
do. But people should not be in pain. Discomfort, yes. Work, yes, absolutely. But if you have sharp shooting pain,
I
we need
agree.
to address that.
I agree. Okay, next. The early bird gets the worm.
I
True or
agree with
false
that.
when it comes to exercise? Okay, one or two sentences why. I think we went over this maybe briefly at our last visit.
Well, when you work out, and this is the very short version of this. When you work out, your basal metabolic rate increases. Your body is going to perspire more, and that is actually how we lose fat, through breathing and fluid loss, where most people think, oh, if I do number two, that's losing fat. No, breathing actually helps you lose fat more. And so you're breathing faster and deeper throughout the day. And so you're going to burn more calories over the day and burn more fat calories specifically over the course of the day if you have increased your breathing earlier in the day versus later.
Okay. That sounds like a metabolism answer. Okay.
It is.
Okay. True or false? You need to stretch before and after exercise, whether it's fast walking or weightlifting.
True.
Ah, okay.
So the type of stretch before and after, that is different.
Before weightlifting or before walking?
Well, kind of both. Anytime you're moving your body from a stagnant, let's say that you just woke up first thing in the morning, you're about to go for a walk. You might want to start out doing movements and range of motion type of movements to kind of get you going first before you start walking faster, for example. It gives your joints and your muscles time to warm up, and it helps reduce the risk of injury. So you want to do dynamic movements before your workouts for either walking, cardio, strength training, whatever. And then you can do your static stuff where you're just holding a stretch after, when your muscles are already loose.
Okay, so if your goal is to walk a 4-minute mile, then you start off the way most of us walk during the entire mile. It's more of a casual, a stroll, more of a
Exactly.
to warm up the joints and limber. And
Mhm.
then afterwards, then you do the static. Oh, well, I'm using my arm as an example, but the leg stretches since you're
Yeah,
moving your legs.
exactly. Hmm.
Okay. All right. Inquiring minds want to know. All right. So I'm going to, we're not, I want you to tell your story about how maybe at one point you fell off the fitness wagon and how you came back, and to encourage our listeners, because again, we, our heart is in the right place.
Hmm.
And sometimes we just need a little inspiration. I saw on your website, your updated website, a quote from one of your clients. It says, "Because of Dr. Jasel, I am 53 pounds lighter, and I know so much more about living a sustainable, healthy lifestyle than when we began." That must really warm your heart. As a medical oncologist or as just a doctor in general, I don't believe patients or clients understand how important those thank yous are. So,
Hmm. And
so
it's nice to hear. It's nice to have that type of impact, especially this particular client. She's a mom and she has children. And so she's able to teach everything she's learned to her children. And that's changing a whole another generation. And
that's
so,
wonderful.
as health providers, and I'm sure you can attest to this, it's what we do goes beyond sometimes just the person in front of us. It's helping to change the narrative and really helping people to understand um, just the pathways and the pathology of some of these conditions. Sometimes people have been diagnosed with things for years and they don't even understand exactly what's happening in their bodies. They just know, I have this. This is what I've been told not to do or what to be told to do. And that's all, that's the extent of it. But it's kind of a disconnected. So it's nice to connect the dots for them. And so For my clients, I like to meet them where they are and kind of tailor what we're talking about to their lifestyle. When do you like to wake up? Do you have a lot of meetings during the day? Are you a parent? Are you a grandparent? Um, do you, like, what does that look like to you? So that has been very heartwarming, but it does stem off of my own experience. Because I know what it's like to even go from being married to single and have my whole list of responsibilities shift. And so being able to relate to certain clients in that way, they're just like, oh, you get it. And so it's like, okay, well, now we can be creative. And I can tell you what I've done. I can tell you what other people have done. But we're able to fit it in where sometimes in that 24-hour period, we don't always seem to. So in 2021, I did have a head injury. And that was the first time that I had been physically unable to work out. My neurologist literally was like, no, you can't. I could not even barely walk to the end of the driveway without feeling just tired. It's very hard to explain. It's a mental fogginess that I just felt discombobulated. Sometimes kind of nauseous, sometimes I would feel short of breath, and for someone who had been a kickboxing instructor and Zumba instructor and CrossFit instructor, all these things, for me not to be able to walk to the end of a driveway, that really did something to my psyche. It did something to all of me, just mentally. It was like, well, what am I going to do with my life if I can't even do what I'm instructing other people to do? So I really had to practice patience with myself. And that's something that I really emphasize is self-compassion. And that's a huge part of the approach that I take with intuitive eating, which can be very different from many other trainers and health professionals out there. They're just like, nope, you got it wrong, kind of slap you on the wrist. And for some people, that type of motivation works, but for the mass majority of people, that does not work. That type of approach completely, they're just like, you know what? My pizza sounds great. It feels great. I feel great eating it. The end. I'm going to stick with that because what you're doing with me right now does not feel great. And so it's really helping people to dig deeper as far as their motivation is concerned, but also still with a sense of self-love. And one of the examples that I give to, I kind of walk through in one of my exercises is an example of a baby, a toddler who's learning how to walk. A baby just doesn't pop up and start walking. He's going to fall a lot of times. And even before the baby gets up from crawling to just walking, they're two completely different activities. You can't just go from crawling to walking. You use completely different muscles. So then they start cruising. It's like, okay, I get this sometimes, but I need some support. And meanwhile, the parents are not critical. They're not, oh my goodness, yes, baby, yes, you're doing it. They're encouraging and they're excited about the progress. And then eventually the baby is walking on its own, is running on its own, skipping, jumping, all the things. And it's the same kind of way when we are adopting lifestyle habits, or if something happens and you are sick. And in my case, you can't work out. I couldn't work out for almost 7 months. And even then, I had to gradually start with just walking and just light bands. And where I'm used to like pressing and cleaning stuff, like I'm working out with bands. Really? So it was a humbling experience, but it also taught me a lot about myself. And I encourage anyone who's on a journey to really ask yourself the questions. Why do you want this? Why did you fall off in the first place? What is it about what you have been told as far as, nutrition and fitness that was overwhelming, maybe even? How do we simplify that? And so yeah, that's my story.
Okay. Well, that was encouraging. I thank you, Dr. Jasel Martin, or Dr. Jazzy Fit. In Louisiana, there is a term, lagniappe, Well, this is Lanyap, a little extra. So we have a moment, Jasel, to expand on those rapid fire answers that you gave earlier. And one was about people having a slow metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why you can't or cannot lose weight. So can you expand or expound on that answer?
Absolutely. So our metabolisms are we they're comprised it's comprised of several things, right? So it is comprised of the energy that's required to keep our body functioning while at rest. So while we're sleeping, while we're just sitting on the couch watching television and whatever. And so this is what we call our basal metabolic rate. I think I mentioned BMR a second ago. That's what I was referring to. This is also partly because of your genes and your genetics, something that you inherited, and something that you can't really change,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Our metabolism is also impacted by our everyday activities. And I'll talk a little bit about physical activity, but then it's also comprised of exercise. And so, as you can see, part of it is something that we control, and part of it is something that we can't. And so the genes, that's why it's so important to understand your genetics and your hormones. And that's why I use hormones to address metabolism issues. Um, because that tends to be, from my experience, one of the most effective ways of trying to mitigate this slightly uncontrollable aspect of our metabolism. The other part of it, the movement and the exercise, those are things we can control. So I encourage people to do things even around the house. If you are cleaning up, if you're gardening, if you're just, every hour I'm going to go run up and down my stairs in my house just to make sure I'm moving, that's movement.
Absolutely.
Exercise is different from movement because it's planned activities. It's literally, I plan to go to the gym at 5 o'clock. I plan to get up and go for a walk. And I'm going to do it for a certain duration, and I'm going to do it for a certain activity. I'm going to do a certain activity, but I'm going to do it for a certain duration and intensity. That's the word I was looking for. So that's a little bit different. But as it
Sure.
pertains to longevity, it's physical activity, just moving your body, that research shows is most closely linked with longevity. So those blue zones that we talked about last time, those communities, they move all day. They're not sitting around, they're not watching TV stagnated. And that's why I tell people,
Mhm.
hey, if you are watching one of your favorite shows, get up and just walk in place, do something, move your
Mhm.
arms, stretch, move your body. Those are the things that are going to keep you
I
from.
remember a story from one of the blue zones, Sicily, or one of those countries where there were two neighboring towns. They both did the same work. I don't know if it was goat work, and they both lived long lives, but one had hilly streets like in San Francisco,
Mhm.
and they had to walk up and down those hills their whole life, and the other wasn't as hilly. The ones that had to walk up and down the hills lived longer. And
Mhm.
so in our everyday lives, the some of my highest step days are when I'm cleaning the house, getting ready for guests, or walking
Mhm.
out in the yard and gardening. And that's when I get above 12,000 steps without even trying. So it is important to keep moving, lifelong, keep moving. Yeah.
Keep on, well, I was going to say keep on moving, but it's really keep on swimming from from Finding Nemo.
Oh,
People
okay.
silly. People silly. But
Okay.
it's I'm being silly, but really we have to move, and our society doesn't really condone that sometimes.
Okay. So that was interesting information about your basal metabolic rate, which is your metabolism. And part of it is hereditary, but the other can be modified or improved with exercise and movement.
Hmm.
And then you wanted to say a few more words about the exercise on the empty stomach or a full stomach.
Well, yes. So if your goal is to lose fat and fat loss, it is best for you to work out in zone two, what we call zone two cardio anyway. So you're probably like, what the heck is that? All right, zone two cardio is we use a formula, it's called the Carbonin formula, and it's 220 minus your age. And then
Mhm.
whatever that number is, you multiply that by 0.70, which is 70% of your
Mhm.
maximum heart rate. And so the idea is that is roughly around the heart rate that you want to maintain when you're walking, or if you are going for a light jog or whatever it is, you're on the Stairmaster. That is where you're going to, that sweet spot of burning fat, pure fat from your body.
So
And
that
so
was, I'm sorry, that was 220 minus your age times zero point 0.7. Is that what you said?
times 0.7. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
And
So
then
that
that's your target heart rate,
Mhm.
assuming you don't have an underlying heart condition and you've been cleared by your physician to exercise.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. If you have a relatively healthy, metabolic profile, and yes, like Dr. N said, we want to make sure that you are
Okay.
cleared by your providers. So, in
Okay.
anywhere from 70 to 80%. So you could take that same thing and just do times 0.80. And so whatever that range is, so, like for example, like 126 beats per minute to 144 beats per minute or something like that. So you stay in that range, your body's burning pure fat. Whereas I've had conversations with people who are like, well, I thought that running was better for you for weight loss. Well, running is good. If you enjoy running, by all means, please run. However, your heart rate's going to be much higher and you're going to be in a different zone of cardio. And in that higher zone of cardio, your body is going to be burning. Yes, it burns more calories because you're turning over your metabolism faster, but you're burning more carbohydrates instead of fat. And
Hmm.
so the fuel source is different of what's being burned in your body because of your heart rate. And remember that amount of, you're still losing fat in your respiration the more you exhale. Absolutely. But your primary source of fuel is coming from carbohydrates. And I don't, part of overtraining, so you want to be moderate in your approach, but part of the concept of overtraining is because you're using the muscles too much, but sometimes it's also the fuel source you're using too much. Our central nervous system likes carbohydrates. That is a fuel source that supplies our brain stem. And so sometimes that's why people who are on keto have brain fog because they don't have carbs. Their body is saying, hey, we need something. We can't think properly because we don't have carbohydrates to
Right.
use.
Right.
So that's the difference between walking and running. So now that people know, they can make a more informed choice of what matters most to them.
Um, where can our listeners find you and any other final thoughts?
They can find me via my website, drjaselmartin.com, or you can find me on practically any social media platform, Dr. Jazzy Fit, Dr. Jazzzyfit. And I know
Okay.
Dr. Ince likes to say Dr. Jazzy Fit.
Yes, Dr. Jazzy Fit. Okay. All right. Well, until we meet again. So excited about discovering you now,
Thank you.
even though we've known you for many years. Okay. Okay.
I'm still here.
All right. All right. Bye. 3 takeaways. Number 1, that brisk walk is often better in the morning after fasting overnight. Number 2, Dr. Martin says that Zone 2 cardio workout is optimal for weight loss. See the attached PDF document for references. Number 3, just keep moving, as Nemo said, or was that swimming? Jasel's recovery from her head injury took patience and compassion, something we need to practice ourselves. Dr. Martin also suggests collaborating with your healthcare provider and a nutritionist. Remember to contact your healthcare provider before embarking on a new healthcare regimen. This podcast is for educational purposes only and does not substitute for advice from your healthcare provider. This is Dr. Christine Ince wishing you a balanced mind, body, and soul.